What if I told you that one simple act of kindness could completely change someone's life? Imagine a world where the rich and powerful use their influence not for themselves, but to lift others up. Well, that's exactly what Barron Trump did when he stunned a school janitor with a brand new luxury SUV. But the real twist? The janitor's reaction is something you won't believe. Stick around as we dive into a story that proves kindness can come from the most unexpected places and leave an impact that lasts forever. Mr. Roberts' life was about to change in a way he could never have imagined. As he was sweeping the floor in the main hallway, a sound caught his attention. It wasn't the usual noise of students chatting or the footsteps of teachers moving about. This was the sound of a car. But not just any car. The rumble of a powerful engine filled the air, causing Mr. Robert to glance out the window. He squinted, not sure what he was seeing. A brand new, sleek SUV pulled into the school parking lot. But this wasn't just a normal SUV, it was a high-end, luxury vehicle, the kind of car that rich people drive. The kind of car that Mr. Robert only saw in magazines or on the streets when someone wealthy drove by. But this wasn't just some random car pulling up. The driver was none other than Barron Trump, the youngest son of former U.S. President Donald Trump. At first, Mr. Robert thought he might be mistaken. After all, Barron wasn't a student at this school. But sure enough, Barron stepped out of the car, dressed in casual clothes, and started walking toward the building. Mr. Robert was taken aback. Why would Barron Trump, a name most people recognized, be here? What was he doing at this school, and why was he driving such an expensive car? As Barron got closer, Mr. Robert's curiosity grew. He had seen Barron in the news, seen photos of him with his famous father, but seeing him in person was something entirely different. He had never imagined this moment, and now here it was. Barron didn't seem to be in a hurry. He didn't seem to be trying to grab attention, either. Instead, he walked calmly, as if this was just another day for him. But there was something different about the way he carried himself, something calm yet confident, as if he knew exactly what he was doing. Mr. Robert wondered why Barron had come here, to his school. Maybe Barron was here to visit someone? Maybe he was doing some charity work, or perhaps he was just here to check out the school for some reason. Mr. Robert's mind raced with possibilities, but nothing seemed to make sense. He was just a janitor. This kind of thing didn't happen to people like him. People like Barron Trump didn't just show up at a school like this for no reason. But what Barron was about to do next would completely catch Mr. Robert off guard. It wasn't long before Barron walked over to where Mr. Robert was working. He stopped in front of him, and for a brief moment, everything was silent. Barron looked down at Mr. Robert and then, in a calm voice, said, "I've got something for you." This was it. Mr. Robert had no idea what was about to happen, but he was about to be part of an unforgettable moment. Barron wasn't here just to make a quick visit. He wasn't here to show off his car or his wealth. Instead, Barron had a plan, and that plan involved Mr. Robert in a way that would forever change the janitor's life. To understand what made Barron's gesture so special, it's important to know a bit about Mr. Robert, the janitor. He wasn't a man of great wealth or high social status. He was someone who lived a humble life, someone who worked tirelessly to keep the school clean and running smoothly. Mr. Robert had been working at this high school for over 20 years, sweeping floors, mopping up spills, fixing small repairs, and generally making sure the students and staff had everything they needed. While other people came and went, he was always there, quietly going about his work. For him, there was no need for fame or attention. He didn't care about luxury cars or designer clothes. His world was simple, and he liked it that way. Every morning, he woke up, put on his uniform, and went to work. He didn't ask for praise, and he didn't expect special treatment. But that didn't mean he didn't have dreams. Deep down, Mr. Robert longed for something more, something beyond the daily grind. He dreamed of taking vacations, enjoying the comforts that other people had, and maybe one day, even driving a car that didn't need constant repairs. But those dreams always seemed out of reach. He knew that he would never be able to afford the luxuries that the wealthier people around him took for granted. As he watched the students come and go, getting into their shiny cars, he often wondered what it would be like to have a life like theirs. He worked hard, but it seemed like the world wasn't offering him any rewards for his effort. And that was okay. He accepted it. But that day, when Barron Trump showed up in his expensive SUV, everything was about to change. Mr. Robert had no idea that his life was going to take a turn he could never have imagined. As Barron stood in front of him, looking calm and composed, Mr. Robert couldn't help but feel a sense of confusion. He had always kept to himself, never expecting anything extraordinary to happen in his life. But here was Barron Trump, someone with a life so far removed from his own, standing right in front of him. Mr. Robert was about to find out why Barron had come to this school, and more importantly, why he had singled out Mr. Robert for something truly special. Barron looked at Mr. Robert with a warm smile and spoke again, I've been thinking about something for a while, and I want you to have this." And with that, Barron reached into his pocket and pulled out something that would leave Mr. Robert in complete shock, a set of car keys. The moment Barron handed Mr. Robert the set of keys, everything seemed to freeze for a second. Mr. Robert blinked, trying to process what had just happened. Barron Trump, the son of one of the most powerful men in the world, had just given him a brand new luxury SUV. Car, no less. A car that was worth more than Mr. Robert could ever dream of. He had never imagined in his wildest dreams that someone, especially Barron Trump, would offer him such a gift. Mr. Robert stood there in shock, unsure of how to respond. The world around him seemed to blur as he stared at the keys in his hand. He had always been a humble man, used to doing his job with quiet dignity. He had never asked for anything, especially not something this grand. Yet here he was, holding the keys to a car that would change his life forever. "Wait. What is this?" Mr. Robert finally managed to ask, his voice shaking. "Why are you giving me this?" Barron smiled warmly, his expression calm. "I've seen you here every day, working hard. You don't ask for attention, but I've noticed. I think you deserve something better than just working behind the scenes." Mr. Robert's mind raced. He had heard of people doing kind deeds, of course, but this was something completely different. Barron wasn't offering him money or a small gesture. He was giving him something that could change his entire future. A car wasn't just a convenience. It was a symbol of freedom, independence, and opportunity. With this car, Mr. Robert's world could be transformed. "You're serious?" Mr. Robert asked, his voice barely above a whisper. This is really for me." Barron nodded. "Yes, I want you to have it. It's time you have something for yourself. You've worked hard for so long, and I think it's only right that you get to enjoy something special." At this point, Mr. Robert was so overwhelmed that he didn't know what to say. He had never expected anything like this, and he couldn't even begin to fathom how his life was about to change. For a moment, he considered refusing the offer. He didn't want to take something so valuable from someone, especially someone like Barron Trump. But then he thought about it. Maybe this was the sign he had been waiting for. Maybe, just maybe, this was his moment to break free from the routine and live a life that was a little more extraordinary. I don't know what to say," Mr. Robert murmured, his eyes still fixed on the keys. Barron smiled again, understanding the hesitation. "You don't need to say anything. Just take it. I know it's a big surprise, but I hope it brings you some happiness." Mr. Robert hesitated for a second longer before finally nodding. "Thank you," he said, his voice filled with gratitude. "I don't know how I'll ever be able to repay you for this." Barron shook his head. "You don't need to repay me. Just enjoy it. You've earned it." And with that, Barron turned and began to walk back to his luxury SUV. But before he got too far, Mr. Robert called out to him. "Wait. Can I ask why you did this? I mean, it's such a big thing. Why me?" Barron paused and looked back at him, his expression softening. "Sometimes people just need a little reminder that they're important. You've been here for so long, doing good work without asking for anything. I just wanted to show you that your hard work hasn't gone unnoticed. Everyone deserves something good in their life." As Barron got into his car and drove away, Mr. Robert stood there, still holding the keys in his hand. He felt a rush of emotions he couldn't quite explain. He had never imagined that something like this would happen to him. It wasn't just about the car, it was about the gesture, the kindness, and the reminder that sometimes people who seem ordinary can have extraordinary things happen to them. As the days went by, the news of Barron Trump's surprise gift to the school janitor spread like wildfire. At first, it seemed like a simple act of kindness, but the more people heard about it, the more they realized that this wasn't just about giving someone a car. It was about something much bigger. Mr. Robert's life had been transformed. With the keys to the SUV in his hand, he felt a sense of pride he hadn't felt in years. He wasn't just a janitor anymore. He was someone who had been recognized for his hard work and dedication. And that recognition, in the form of the car, gave him a newfound sense of self-worth. He could now go places he had never been before, visit family members he hadn't seen in years, and even think about things he had once thought were impossible. He spent the next few days driving the car around, getting used to it. The feeling of sitting behind the wheel of a luxury SUV was surreal. It wasn't just about the car itself, it was about what it represented. The car was a symbol of the possibility that sometimes things could change in an instant. It was a reminder that kindness and generosity could have an impact on someone's life in ways that money could never measure. People at the school couldn't stop talking about Barron's gesture. Some were skeptical, wondering why he had chosen to give the car to Mr. Robert, while others were touched by the sheer thoughtfulness of it. One thing was clear, Barron had made an impression, and his act of kindness was a reminder to everyone that sometimes, the smallest gestures could make the biggest difference. For Mr. Robert, however, the impact of the gift went beyond the material. He realized that he didn't need to live a life of luxury to feel important. What mattered most was that someone had noticed his hard work, and that recognition meant more than anything else. The car was just a bonus. The true gift was the confidence and pride he now carried with him every day. Barron Trump's unexpected act of generosity didn't just change Mr. Roberts' life, it had a ripple effect throughout the school and beyond. The news of the SUV gift spread quickly, thanks to the students and teachers who witnessed the heartwarming moment. People couldn't stop talking about it, and for many, it served as a reminder that kindness still existed in the world. In a society often consumed by headlines about wealth, politics, and power, Barron's simple yet profound gesture stood out as something pure and real. At first, people were surprised. After all, Barron Trump wasn't someone you'd expect to be handing out cars to janitors. He was known for his famous family, his wealth, and his high-profile life. So why would he go to such lengths to do something like this for a school janitor? What motivated him to step outside of his world and into the life of someone like Mr. Robert? The answer, however, wasn't something Barron was eager to explain in detail. It wasn't about attention or fame. It wasn't about making a grand statement or getting credit. Barron had simply seen something in Mr. Robert that others may have overlooked, the quiet dedication of a man who worked hard every single day without asking for anything in return. Barron had witnessed people like Mr. Robert all his life, but he had never really understood the depth of their commitment until he found himself standing there, handing over the keys. For Barron, this wasn't just about giving away a luxury car, it was about giving something to someone who deserved it. And it didn't take long for people to realize that Barron's gesture had a much deeper meaning than what appeared on the surface. People started to talk about kindness, about doing something for someone else without expecting anything in return. And more than that, it sparked a conversation about the importance of appreciating those who often go unnoticed, the janitors, the workers, the people who serve behind the scenes, making things run smoothly without asking for the spotlight. The impact was felt not just at the school, but in the wider community. Mr. Roberts' story was shared on social media, and soon it reached people from all over the country. The story resonated with so many who had been in similar situations, people who worked hard every day but never received recognition. Barron's gift wasn't just a car, it was a message to everyone: no good deed goes unnoticed. It was a reminder that kindness, no matter how big or small, can change lives in ways that go beyond material possessions. As the story spread, people began to reflect on their own lives. They started to ask themselves, what can I do for someone else? How can I make a difference? The gift wasn't just a material possession, it was a spark that ignited a chain of goodwill. For Mr. Robert, the days that followed were filled with new opportunities and challenges. He was now seen differently by those around him. No longer just the janitor, he became a symbol of the power of kindness. People in the school treated him with newfound respect, and he even began to consider new possibilities for his future. With the car, he was no longer confined to his daily routine. He could travel, explore, and do things he had never thought possible before. But the change wasn't just about the car, it was about the way others started to view him. People began to see Mr. Robert not just as a worker, but as someone who had value, someone who deserved recognition. And that recognition, more than the car itself, was what truly transformed Mr. Roberts' life. The act of giving that Barron Trump had initiated continued to have an impact long after he had driven away in his luxury SUV. Barron didn't seek attention for what he had done, nor did he expect anything in return. In fact, it seemed that he didn't want the spotlight at all. He was a quiet individual who preferred to stay in the background, but his small, kind gesture became a story that many people could not forget. For Barron, the decision to give the SUV to Mr. Robert wasn't about making headlines or gaining public approval. It wasn't about building a reputation for himself. Instead, it was a way of showing that even people in positions of power and privilege can make a difference in the lives of others. His gesture showed that you don't need to be famous or wealthy to spread kindness, you just need to recognize when someone is deserving of a little extra attention. In the days that followed, Barron remained out of the spotlight, choosing to keep a low profile, as he always did. But the message of his gift lived on. It inspired others to think about how they could make a positive impact on the people around them, no matter their position in life. The story of Barron and Mr. Robert wasn't just about one person's generosity, it was about the possibility of creating a culture of kindness. It was about teaching others that sometimes the most powerful gifts are not the most expensive or flashy, they're the ones that come from the heart. As people in Barron's life reflected on his gesture, they realized that this was not just a random act of kindness, it was part of a bigger message that Barron had quietly been sending all along. His life, often under public scrutiny, had always been one of privilege. But Barron had used his position of privilege not to make himself stand out, but to shine a light on someone else who deserved recognition. It was a message of humility, empathy, and understanding. The more people learned about the story, the more they were inspired to do similar acts of kindness in their own lives. Whether it was helping a neighbor, supporting a friend in need, or simply taking the time to appreciate the people who worked hard behind the scenes, Barron's simple gesture sparked a movement of goodwill. And though Barron may never have realized the full extent of the impact he had made, the ripples of his kindness continued to spread across the community. As for Mr. Robert, his life had been forever changed. He was no longer just the janitor. He had been recognized for his hard work and his character. And in a way, that was the most valuable gift Barron had given him. For Mr. Robert, the transformation was more than just the shiny new SUV parked in his driveway. It was a new chapter in his life, one where he could begin to see himself in a different light. He wasn't just the invisible worker who went unnoticed. He was someone who had been seen, appreciated, and valued. And that made all the difference. As the weeks passed, Mr. Robert's confidence grew. He no longer felt like he was stuck in a routine that would never change. With the car, he found himself exploring new opportunities. He visited family members he hadn't seen in years. He took short trips to places he had always wanted to go, and he even began to think about what he wanted to do next in his life. The possibilities seemed endless, and for the first time in a long time, Mr. Robert felt that he had the chance to live a fuller, more rewarding life. The car, though a symbol of Barron's kindness, also symbolized a new beginning for Mr. Robert. It wasn't just about driving a luxury vehicle, it was about the doors it opened, the confidence it gave him, and the sense of self-worth he now carried with him. His world had expanded in ways he could never have imagined. He wasn't just a janitor anymore. He was a person with potential, with dreams, and with the ability to create a future for himself that was beyond what he had thought possible. As for Barron, his quiet legacy lived on through the actions of those he had inspired. His gesture, simple as it may have seemed at the time, had changed lives. It reminded people that sometimes the most significant acts of kindness are the ones we least expect. And in a world that can often seem disconnected, Barron Trump had proven that it's the little things, the thoughtful gestures, that can truly make a difference. The story of Barron and Mr. Robert was one that would be told for years to come, not just as a tale of generosity, but as a reminder that no matter who you are or where you come from, you have the power to make someone's life better with a simple act of kindness. And for Mr. Robert, that lesson was one he would carry with him every day as he drove his new SUV into the future, forever grateful for the moment that changed everything. As the days turned into weeks, the significance of Barron Trump's unexpected act of kindness continued to resonate deeply within the community. It wasn't just about the car anymore, it was about the larger message of humanity and compassion. People began to discuss how often the small, overlooked gestures could be the most meaningful. They realized that every person, regardless of their job or their social status, could experience something extraordinary if given the opportunity. Mr. Robert, with his newfound sense of worth, started to approach his life differently. He was no longer bound by the feeling of invisibility that often comes with being in a service position. When he walked through the school halls, students who had once passed him by now greeted him with respect. Teachers acknowledged him with warm smiles, understanding that the janitor was no longer just a figure cleaning the floors. He was someone who had been touched by kindness and had a story to tell. People noticed his new aura of confidence, and it sparked a ripple effect. Others began to realize the importance of appreciating those who work hard in silence. But even more than that, Mr. Robert's transformation went beyond how others treated him. He felt more empowered to take control of his own future. The car wasn't just a luxury, it was an invitation to live life on his own terms. Before, he had been confined to the school grounds, his movements limited to the work he did there. But with the new SUV, he had freedom. He could travel, explore, and see the world in a way he had never been able to before. It opened up a world of opportunities that had seemed out of reach. His view of the future was no longer clouded by doubt or resignation. He began to dream again, to think about what he could do next with his life. Barron Trump's simple act of generosity had not only changed Mr. Robert's life, but it had also made a lasting impression on everyone who heard the story. It was a reminder that kindness could transcend all boundaries, age, status, wealth, or background. The world often focuses on material wealth, but Barron's gesture showed that true wealth lies in the ability to make a positive impact on others. And sometimes, that impact doesn't need to be grand or dramatic. Sometimes, it's as simple as handing over a set of keys and telling someone they matter. The lesson from Barron's actions spread far and wide. People began to look at their own lives and the lives of others with more empathy. How often do we walk past someone and fail to notice the hard work they do, the quiet sacrifices they make? Barron Trump's unexpected gift reminded people to stop, to see, and to appreciate. It wasn't about grand gestures. It was about recognizing the value in those who work tirelessly behind the scenes, without the expectation of reward or acknowledgement. In the end, the story wasn't just about a car. It wasn't just about Barron Trump or Mr. Robert. It was about a message that echoed across communities, a message that kindness has the power to change lives. And it is the smallest acts of kindness, like the gift of a car, that can sometimes have the biggest impact, reminding us that even in a world that often feels divided, there's always room for empathy, compassion, and generosity.